Part 3 of Harris, Hegel, and the Psychologic System. The Psychologic System. The second part of the Psychologic Foundations of Education, titled The Psychologic System, uncovers the way self-activity unfolds and passes through the stages of feeling, sensation, recollection, memory, conception, and reason, then culminating in the will and embracing the preceding processes in itself. Self-activity rises to the top of the hierarchy and looks down on them to consult and guide them in control of the processes. The second part is titled An Attempt to Show the Genesis of the Higher Faculties of the Mind. The lower faculties function to produce the higher. This can be viewed as a criticism or a protest made against inventory psychology, together with its concurrent doctrine of harmonious development as a guide to education. For Harris, this doctrine ignores the start of higher faculties from the lower faculties, arresting mental development. Being is positive only after it has negated itself. Being is a positive thing and a self-related negative thing. Harris discusses each of these three stages: self-activity or being. Plato talked of by Plato and Spinoza through his own interpretation of Hegel. The first stage, feeling, is intellect and will in an unconscious form, or intuition. Feeling arises only when the impression made on the organism is produced again within itself. In feeling, the self-activity continues as a reaction without attacking the object by a real process. Self-activity is a reaction against surrounding conditions. In recollection and memory, the self-activity further isolates the object and itself from the world. The capacity to recollect images is a higher form of self-activity because it can recall the ideal object. Recollection is a collection of representations not bound by time. Memory is a systematized recollection. Memory is the grouping faculty by whose aid sense perception becomes a perceiver of species as well as individuals. Through the activity of introspection, the mind ascends from sense perception to memory. With attention, self-activity can better discriminate between the a particular object, and its general type. Memory is the conscious reproduction of an object, while perception is an unconscious reproduction of the form of the object. The second stage. The second stage traces relations and finds that things do not exist in immediate independence, but that each is related to others. Were a grain of sand to be destroyed, the universe would collapse. Were a grain of sand to be destroyed, the universe would collapse. A thing either is in one state or another. If it is in any one state, it is not changing, nor likewise if it is already in another. Therefore, a thing cannot change. When self-activity notices that its perception is connected with conceptions, it perceives each and every object as a result of a process. Thus, it knows an object in its class rather than as a unique individual. Common sense fails when applied to particulars. Each object is related to something else and changes when that changes. The second stage only reduces all to dependence and finitude, and does not show us how any real, true, or independent being can be found to exist. It holds fast to the stage of mediation alone, just as the first stage held by the immediate. But we believe that ideas possess more reality than the objects of perception. The force is more real than the object because it outlasts the object. Force also causes things to originate, to change, and disappear. The force is the activity side of the self-activity, the essential unity of all processes and forces, leads to the doctrine of the correlation of forces. Reflection makes all things relative because the objects that we perceive are all of them in a process of origination, change, and decay. All objects of the senses are relative in the stage of reflection. They are transitory, and they have originated in the past from each other. They are transitory and have originated in the past from other beings in an endless series. Each is not the whole of itself, but only a fragmentary realization of its true self. Beings only exist in their relations. Relations are essentially negative. Since this relation is that of the negative, it negates itself in its very relation, and hence its identity is a producing of non-identity. Identity and distinction are produced by the same process, and thus self-determination is the origin of all identity, and the distinction otherwise. Distinction likewise. I apologize. This is the speculative standpoint in its completeness. Again, identity and distinction are produced by the same process, and thus self-determination is the origin of all identity and distinction likewise. And again, this is the speculative standpoint in its completeness. Self-activity is the negative unity of the self as subject of the act. It is passive only as determined as the object, but not as subject. Now, as object, it is entirely without determinations of the world of experience. It is wholly transcendent. The subject encompasses the negative unity, as the subject is considered apart from the object. The understanding arrives at a negative unity, which is an original, a causa sui. This is self-activity. The analysis of self-activity finds itself as subject, and self as object, self as determiner, and self as determined. The negative unity is the end of analysis, and as causa sui, it is the beginning of synthesis. Self-activity determines itself and produces distinctions within itself. It externalizes or makes itself objective. All right, so I hope you followed along. I apologize. In the last year, I think I said it was going to get less prolix, and I was wrong. I apologize. Just stay with me for the third stage, and then this series will be complete. The third stage: memory and concept forming activity. Memory and concept forming activity convert the results of sense perception into general terms. The final standpoint of the intellect is that in which it perceives the highest principle to be a self-determining or self-active being, self-consciousness, and creator of a world which manifests him. The persistent force is the soul in ultimate reality. Again, let me go back over that. The final standpoint of the intellect is that which it is that in the final standpoint of the intellect is that in which it perceives the highest principle to be a self-determining or self-active being, self-consciousness, and creator of a world which manifests him. The persistent force is the soul in ultimate reality. The highest step of knowing is self-knowing. It is not merely consciousness, it is the recognition that reason is not only in me, but also beyond the world, or in its innermost as its cause. Completed self-determination is not only intellect, but will. The will combines with the intellect to produce the higher orders of knowing. Self-knowing is made of two stages: attention and analysis. After attention gathers sense impressions that proceed from the particular object, it discriminates between them. The discrimination separates the object from other objects and defines it. This is how attention becomes analysis. All specialization of attention is analysis. Analysis organizes the sense impressions, and through them, the object is defined. In an isolated object, analysis detects the influence of other objects and the influence of isolated object and other objects. Analysis is composed of repeated acts of attention. Through the analysis of an object's reaction and to and from other objects, the mind can trace the object into its unity with other objects. The result of this repeated synthesis through repeated acts of attention is, in analysis, we have synthesis. Let me go back. The result of repeated analysis is synthesis. Through repeated acts of attention in analysis, we have synthesis. The activity which we have defined as reflection is therefore the ultimatum of analysis in the beginning of synthesis. Attention, analysis, and reflection result in generalization because they discover a community of being between the object and its environment. Synthesis is the discovery of connections of reciprocal actions of the object synthesis is the discovery of connections of reciprocal actions of the action of the object upon other objects and of the reaction in turn of these objects upon it. Synthesis is the discovery of a system of relations which connect the object with other objects. The whole can't be dependent on another whole. The whole must be independent. The whole must be self-active because it can't by any possibility receive its attributes and properties from another, and it must originate itself. This predicate of self-activity applied to the whole is the most important conclusion reached in this higher kind of knowing. And all right, so stay tuned for part 4, the fourth and final part of Harris, Hegel, and the Psychologic System. Thank you.